All right, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us today. This is Disability Rights South Carolina University's Clients' Rights in Facilities. I'm going to go over a few things with you first. Number one, this webinar is being recorded and will be posted to YouTube next week. Second off, we do have everyone muted and we will unmute you when questions come. So we'll allow about 15 minutes for Q&A at the end of the session. You can either raise your hand and I will unmute you, or you can go ahead and type your question into the chat box at any time during the presentation. Our next session, just to let everyone know, our next DRSC youth session is called Assistive Technology and Employment, and it will be on May 14th from 12 to 1. And we will go ahead and get started today. We have two speakers today. We have Anna Maria Connor from Disability Rights South Carolina, one of our attorneys with us. And we also have Dale Watson, State Long-Term Care Ombudsman. And I will go ahead and hand it off to Anna Maria to get us started today.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for joining us on our session. Next slide, please. We're going to talk about client rights in facilities. So first of all, I want to tell you a little bit about DRSC. We're a private nonprofit. All our services are free. We are an entity that is required by state and federal law to protect the rights of people with disabilities in South Carolina. And we are all independent agencies that provide treatment, or we are independent of agencies that provide treatment or other services to people with disabilities. And again, our mission is to protect people with disabilities and advance the legal, civil, and human rights of those individuals across the state. We were formerly known as Protection and Advocacy for People with Disabilities. Next slide. Just to give you a little bit of an idea of our services, one of the main things we do is provide information and referral. So if you have a question, hopefully about something concerning a person with a disability, you can call us. If you call us on other issues, we will refer you to the appropriate office or agency that may be able to help you with that question. But if it's something about somebody with a disability and an issue that relates to their disability, then please contact us and we'll try to provide information and referral if nothing else. We also provide legal support, which may mean explaining laws that are out there, explaining what rights are there and available. Could be explaining how to file a complaint. And from time to time, we do open up cases. A lot of our cases are trying to get services for individuals with disabilities, or again, explain services and advocating for the protection of their rights. Doesn't mean that we will litigate, but we have looked at litigation and we will sometimes litigate. We do a lot of education and outreach, programs like today, for instance. We also will do live presentations at different meetings and trainings. We also do monitoring investigations of facilities. That's coming particularly from our federal authority. We go out routinely to state-run facilities across the state, and we do go into other facilities as needed. We investigate allegations of abuse, neglect, and exploitation. We do not do forensic investigations like policemen do, but we do go in and look at whether or not reports were made, whether or not investigations were then done, if they were good investigations, and then if appropriate remedial action was taken as a result of that investigation. Our goal is to make sure that people with disabilities are free from abuse and neglect, that they know how to report instances or allegations of abuse or neglect, and that action is taken when allegations are made. And our last area of work is public policy. We are trying to educate lawmakers and policymakers on the rights of people with disabilities and also issues that concern them. Are they having trouble getting housing? Are they having trouble with transportation? Is it Medicaid transportation or is it public transportation? And what do we want lawmakers or policymakers to know about those issues? Next slide. Our issue areas are rather broad. One of the main ones is, again, abuse, neglect, and exploitation. We also look at education, pre-K through post-secondary, employment and pre-employment transition services for kids, for instance. Community integration issues. Is somebody having trouble getting Medicaid services? Are they having trouble getting services under a Medicaid waiver? Or do they know what waivers are? Medicaid and healthcare. Again, are they eligible for Medicaid? Are they getting appropriate services? Have their hours been reduced? Things like that. And then broader claims under the Americans with Disabilities Act. Again, are they getting services that would help them move out of an institution so that they can live in a community setting? Are they in a community setting but in danger of losing those services or having some other type of adverse action taken that could force them back into an institution? It could also be a barrier to employment, a physical barrier to a building, the lack of effective communication. Those are all issues under the Americans with Disabilities Act. We also work on assistive technology. Does somebody need a new device, an upgrade, for instance, with a device that can help them communicate? Are they having trouble with the device they already own? Let's say they got one that just doesn't operate properly. So it'd be what we would call a lemon claim, a lemon law claim. Again, it could be upgrading, it could be getting a new wheelchair. And we also work on voting issues. Are people with disabilities being denied the opportunity to vote because there are barriers, whether it's physical, a lack of information about their rights to vote, they're not being given opportunities to use curbside voting or anything about voting and disabilities. Next slide. So today we're here to talk about the basic rights of individuals who live or are receiving services in long-term care facilities. And the first right is, of course, to be free from abuse, neglect, and exploitation. You also have a right in a long-term care facility to continue to choose your medical providers, to make decisions about your care and treatment, to be treated with privacy, dignity, and respect, and to be able to live in the most integrated setting possible for you. Next slide. All right. Freedom from abuse and neglect starts off with, first of all, do you live in a safe and clean physical structure? Are there sufficient staff to provide services for you? Do you need help getting in and out of bed, for instance? And is there always a staff member there who can get you in and out of bed at appropriate times? Do you need to be able to move around and help moving in and out of a wheelchair or navigating through that facility? Is the structure clean? Again, are staff members there sufficient hours of the day? Are there enough staff to provide services to you and to other individuals? And if there are individuals with behavioral issues, again, is there enough staff there for supervision? You also are entitled to disease-free food and safe feeding practices. Is the kitchen clean? Are they serving you food that's hot? Are they serving you an appropriate diet? So do they need to get a nutritionist on staff to help do meal planning or to come up with a better plan for meals? Is there sufficient supervision to prevent injuries? And again, that could be, simply requiring that people who know how to transfer you do it properly. Again, it could be supervising behavioral problems and trying to make sure that other people don't come and injure you or injure your family member. You also have the right to be free from physical, psychological, sexual, and verbal abuse. So nobody should be calling you names. Nobody should be denigrating you or threatening you verbally or physically. Obviously, sexual assaults should be prevented, and there should be no improper relationship between staff members and anyone who lives in a facility. It also means that you should be free from restraint and seclusion. And we are looking at policies that address grievances and reporting incidents as well. Do you know how to make a complaint? Does your family member know how to make a complaint? And do you know who you can complain to depending upon what facility you're in? Next slide. So first of all, freedom to make decisions about your health care. And that starts with deciding who's going to be your medical provider. Do you have doctors before you go into the facility that you have had a long-term relationship with, for instance, and really understand the care that you need? Do you have access to those doctors once you're in the facility? Are you being allowed the opportunity to know what recommendations are being made about your health care and to make decisions? For instance, do you get to choose between a couple of different medications if there's more than one that can address one of your issues? Do you know about changes in your treatment and care before they happen? Are those discussed with you and your family members if you choose to ask them to participate? And you always have the right to refuse to participate in experimental research. And you also have the right to avoid unnecessary physical and medical restraints. Medical restraints often occur when you're given shots, for instance, to calm you down, to make you relax, and to make you more controlled. Next slide. All right. The Bill of Rights for residents of long-term care facilities is actually a section of the South Carolina state law. And this is the code section right here, 44-81-1070. And it's actually called the Bill of Rights for long-term care facilities. And it actually spells out a lot of the rights that we just talked about. You or your legal representatives, your family members should receive copies of notices that talk to you about the Bill of Rights and explain what they are. You should receive written communications, and again, your family members should have access to this as well. You should also be informed in writing how to file a grievance, a complaint about how you are being treated or how your family members being treated, and other ways to enforce your rights. And a signed written notice should be added to your file that shows that you were explained, that you were given all that information and had an opportunity to talk about it, and you have your own copy. Next slide. And I want to invite Dale Watson, who is our state long-term care ombudsman, to talk a little bit about what her program does. Dale?
Thank you, Maria, for inviting me, and thank you all for allowing me to speak. The relationship we have had with the disability rights has been years, and we appreciate everything that they do to work in facilities and to work alongside us to ensure quality care. So, as you can see on the slide, our long-term care ombudsman program, our job as ombudsman, we work to resolve complaints made on behalf of the resident. We are advocates for the resident, and our job is to respond to the residents' complaints or either their issues or concerns that they bring to us or someone brings to us on their behalf to ensure quality care. Next slide. So as I said earlier, we address issues related to quality of care and quality of life. We look at the facility, that is the residents or the consumer's home, and they should have quality care, quality of life. You have already gone over the basic rights that all the residents have by federal law and by state law. And so our job also is to ensure the quality of care and quality of life in those facilities. Next slide. In South Carolina, we have over 2,000 long-term care facilities, and that includes the nursing homes, assisted living facilities, disabilities and special needs, and DMH facilities. So we have over 43,000 beds that we go into, that we have the responsibility for. Our job is to go into the facilities at least quarterly. We're mandated by federal law to go into the facilities at least quarterly to do a visit and to check on the residents, to speak with them, to see if they have any issues that we can assist them with. And sometimes they want us to advocate. They don't want to do it. They may not feel empowered enough. So our job is to also empower the resident to handle the situations too. And if they want us to be their voice or to sit in on a meeting with them, we will do that. But our job is to go in, we investigate complaints about abuse, neglect, exploitation, any of the concerns that the residents or their representatives bring to us, we investigate, look into those concerns. And then if they want us to go further and talk with the administrators or perhaps refer those cases over to the Department of Public Health, then we do that also. An example, I always tell folks that the days of cold coffee and call bells are almost gone. But if there is something that deals with the care, it could be wound care. It could be that someone's not getting their medication. It could be that the resident is not getting their money, their personal needs money. So any of the issues that, because all of those things affect that resident's life and how their day-to-day life and how they live and their care in the facility. So it could be anything. It could be visitation. They're not being allowed to have folks to visit. So whatever that concern is for the resident, then we will look into that issue and try to resolve that issue for the resident. And we also circle back to be sure that it sticks, so to speak, to be sure that it has not been undone. So, and that's one of the purposes of us going into the facilities on at least a quarterly basis at the minimum, to be sure that things are working well for the resident. But again, we have over 43,000 folk that we have the pleasure of serving type things. Our complaints are volatile. They go up, they go down. What we're trying to do is to keep the complaints from going up by solving it at the lowest level. And that means some type of, if that means, I don't want to say the word mediation, but that we're working with the resident and helping them to resolve the issue before it becomes a complaint investigation type thing. Next slide. So some of the issues, a violation of their rights. Some of the ones that we have talked about, that were talked about earlier. If there's a violation of that resident's rights and that the resident or his or her representatives contacts us, then we will go in and try to resolve that issue. We will keep working on it until we resolve that issue. Some of the things we also look at: improper transfer or discharge of a resident. It's mandated by federal law that if there is a discharge of a resident, we must be notified. But the resident also must be notified, and they must have a 30-day notice. That is a proper discharge, is that the resident has to have a 30-day notice of the transfer. It has to state why they were being discharged type thing and where they're being discharged to. They can't just discharge them to people have tried this in the past. They've tried to discharge them to a homeless shelter. They've tried to discharge people to a bus station. Some have been given a bus ticket, and we've had to intervene on those type of issues. So it is a federal law, it is a state law that you have to discharge residents properly, and it have to be discharged to the appropriate level of care. You can't just push people back home. And we've had situations where they tried to put them in ambulances and just leave them at someone's doorstep, or where all those kinds of things. We do assist folk with benefits as much as possible. We're not experts on that, but we have within the Aging Network folk who work with Medicare, and we have folk who we do have the contacts with the Medicaid agency. So we're able to assist folk with providing them with the knowledge and the resource of the correct resources, I should say. Dignity and respect is the cornerstone of what we do. That's one of the cornerstones of the resident rights. And as we've said earlier, abuse, neglect, and exploitation, everyone has the right to live free of this. And they also have the right to have dignity and respect in the care that is being provided to them. So those are things that we work on every day. And we go in and we train staff about these things, about, how does it feel if you were the one in this situation? So we do a lot of training at all of the facilities that will allow us to train staff. And it doesn't matter what time of the day. We do training 2:00 in the morning if necessary. If that is when we can have access to the staff, and they can come and attend the training at that time. Next slide. Um, okay, and I think that's you.
Okay. Thank you, Dale.
Thank
As
you.
we talked about, people who live in institutions have the same basic rights of people who live in the community. You still have the right to live and work in the most integrated setting possible. So you should always know what your level of care is, or the level of care of the person that you are working with in your family or as a friend. Do they need a nursing home setting? And are there alternatives to where they can receive services? For instance, Medicaid waivers are a way that a lot of people avoid staying in institutions. Most of the waivers in South Carolina require that you meet the level of care of a nursing home or what's called an intermediate care facility for individuals with intellectual disabilities. But again, if you meet those levels of care, you should have the opportunity to explore waiver programming. Is it something that you want to try? And waivers are a way to give people a choice, to live in an institution and receive services there, or to try to take advantage of a waiver program and stay and live in the community and receive services outside the institution. Another right is to receive accommodations in schools, works, and community. So again, if you are going to choose to live out in the community, do you want to work? You can actually, in some facility settings, continue to work. For instance, some people in community residential care facilities or assisted living facilities, as they're commonly referred to, do continue to keep employment. That is a right. Just like you retain your right to decide on your medical care providers, you also have the right to talk to people that you want to talk to and to have visitors at those facilities. Do you have a way to make private telephone calls, for instance, from a facility? That's a basic right that you should receive no matter where you live. And the right to self-determination exists both in facilities and in the community. Do you have advance directives? Are you interested in signing an advance directive? Advance directives are the documents that will tell medical professionals what you want to do if you suffer an emergency in healthcare. If you get very ill and cannot make decisions, let's say you're unconscious, if you go into a coma, what do you want done at that point in time, and who gets to make those decisions on your behalf? So that's why they're called advance directives. There are other documents, though, that are like advance directives. For instance, a power of attorney is the same thing as an advance directive. It's just called power of an attorney because it usually addresses other types of situations. It could be about a financial affair, who's going to handle your money. It could be about your property, real estate. It could be about your medical affairs again. Let's say you want somebody to help you make decisions about treatment that is not concerning end of life treatment. Then you can actually sign a power of attorney inviting somebody else to help you make those decisions. The right to be free from discrimination always exists no matter where you live. And again, that could be in the facility as well as outside the facility. Are you being treated unfairly just based upon your disability or based upon another attribute that is just something that's about you that maybe makes you unique? But again, are you being treated unfairly just because of that characteristic? Next slide. Okay, we're back to long-term care ombudsman. As Dale discussed, they advocate for residents. They're very similar in some ways to what we do. And this is why disability rights and the long-term care ombudsman have worked so well together for as long as we have, because we all look out for the rights of residents. And I think one of the strongest things about the long-term care ombudsman too is they really work well with family members and other people who are interested in the long-term care residents. They navigate that maze between making decisions. What is a facility like? What facilities might be appropriate for my family member? And they really educate not only the family members, but also the staff members on resident rights and benefits. So that could be extremely beneficial. We talked a little bit about quality of care or quality of life. Dale, can you give us some examples of the quality of life issues that you've looked at in the past?
I keep clicking. Well, I thought I talked a little bit about it. again, it can be, maybe I just said quality of care, but when we're looking at quality of life, when we're looking at the rights of those residents, because sometimes, as I said, regarding the personal needs monies, about being able to go out and visit, going out to have dinner, going out to have lunch, those kinds of things, we advocate for those things also. Because even though they're in a facility, that's still part of the community. So whatever makes makes their life better, I guess I'm trying to say. If it's dinner, if it's going to a movie, if it's having activities in the facilities to do the things that they're used to doing. If it's playing gin rummy, and I always say, please don't make me play bingo if I have to go in a facility. Please don't. But whatever that resident wants, if it's art, those kinds of things to help them live a quality life or have a good day in a facility, we advocate for those things for that resident and for all residents in the facility.
And I think that's one of the things that we forget about. Watching TV and watching movies is fun, but those are solitary activities. And if that's all we offer people, then after a while, I think life becomes very boring. There's no stimulation there, and there's very little interaction with anybody else. So that's one of the issues that we look for when we go out into facilities. Are they providing activities for residents? Sometimes it's therapeutic. Are they having group sessions, for instance, for people that need those in mental health care facilities? And are they doing it on a routine basis? But a lot of times we're looking at the quality of life issues as well. So we're looking, if we go out into a community residential care facility, we actually have a program where we go out to make 72 visits a year. And we'll look for whether or not they have clothing. Do they have enough clothes for at least 7 days a week? And are the clothes clean? And are they appropriate to the season? So if, in the wintertime, you want to make sure that people have warm clothing to wear. In the summertime, you want to make sure that they have that, short sleeves or cotton clothing, something that's easier to wear in the hot summers, as well as look at the big issues like, do they have air conditioning in these units or in the facilities? So quality of life can cover a range of questions and a range of concerns. But I think it's really important to remember that is a big part of what the long-term care ombudsman does and what we do, because quality of care will address the medical needs and the psychological needs quite often. But if you don't have quality of life, then I think that's at least a bigger problem for our clients and for our family members to address. One of the things that the long-term care ombudsman does too is look at appeals and grievance processes. Do they have those processes in place? And again, do the residents and the family members know how to access the appeals and grievance process? Every facility should have a poster in the facility that explains how to reach out to the long-term care ombudsman, how to reach out to the P&A for the state, DRSC, and also how to file appeals and grievances, how to make complaints. And again, both our agency and long-term care ombudsman educate the residents, caregivers, stakeholders, providers, and other people about long-term care and the issues that these residents face. Next slide. Okay, we've talked a little bit about support versus control. What we're trying to make sure is that people understand that you can still support individuals who are in long-term care without controlling them completely. If somebody has the ability to understand decisions and to to know that they might want somebody to help them if they're ill, then they might have the capacity to sign a power of attorney. So do they have the opportunity to actually work on this document and pick somebody to hold their power of attorney and sign that form? Do they have the ability and the opportunity to sign the advanced psychiatric directives or the regular advanced directives? So that again, it lets them choose who will help support them if they have emergency medical situations or other problems arising in the future. Another law that is beneficial in this area is the Adult Healthcare Consent Act. And that is a state law. It applies to every adult in South Carolina. And it basically says if you do not have a power of attorney or an advance directive and you have an emergency with your health care, then we're going to look at who is the next best person in line to make a decision on your behalf. So they're going to first look at, do you have a relative? And it could be a sibling, it could be a parent or a grandparent, it could be your spouse. There's actually an order of procedure for them to look at, and it goes all the way through to looking at situations where there are no family members, looking at whether or not you go to a church and do you have somebody special at your church that can step in and help make decisions, or is it going to be a state agency? And if it's a state agency, then there are hoops that state agency has to jump through before they can make decisions on your behalf. It is not a way for the state to take control of your life. It only applies in emergency situations and only for medical care. But it is a law that exists and it applies to every person who is an adult in South Carolina. And it can be a great way to fill the gaps when you don't have these other documents in place before something bad happens. Next slide. Okay, we also have the Adult Students with Disability Rights Act, and that basically is a way for students who are turning 18 and being considered an adult to continue to allow their parent or another person to be with them in making educational decisions, go to the IEP meetings with them, and so forth. And there are also ways to do supported decision making. We've worked with independent living centers here in South Carolina for years in helping people understand that it's okay that people with disabilities actually go and get support when they have decisions to make about their lives. We do that in our everyday lives every day. You know, when I buy a car, I go and I talk to my brother. That's a form of supported decision making. When I'm going to enter into a big contract, I may talk with my friends. I may talk with some financial planners about whether or not I'm getting offered a good deal before I make this purchase and before I sign this mortgage. Those are all ways that people every day get help making decisions. And so people with disabilities have the same right. And you can actually, if you choose to do so, come up with a supported decision-making agreement with select individuals who are going to help you on certain topics. That's part of the supported decision-making project that DRSC has worked on with Able, South Carolina for a number of years. Another way to support decisions is representative payees. Under Social Security, an individual who receives Social Security benefits can actually have a representative payee to handle their money for them. But the right to have a representative payee stays with the person who's actually receiving the cash benefits, and they can change as long as they have the capacity to understand what they're doing. They can change and get a new representative payee when they fill out the proper forms with Social Security. But again, it's a limited power. It only works with Social Security benefits and income that is designated in that account. Next slide. Talk quickly here about the right to community integration. Again, that's the right to choose whether you want to live in an institution, whether you want to try to receive services out in the community. Do you want to work? And it is there, particularly under the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, and the Olmstead case that was decided in 1999 by the U.S. Supreme Court. Next slide. How do you pay for that integrated care? Quite often, Medicaid funding pays for care services in the facility. It does not pay room and board. So if you are living in a facility, typically they're going to look at, do you have private income or private insurance that pays for the bed that you're living in and administrative costs of operating the procedures and those types of things? Or do you have Social Security income coming in or another type of income. But looking at your nursing care, your therapies, your drug therapies, and other things like that, those are things that can be paid for through Medicaid or Medicare. And of course, we also have Medicaid waivers, which are programs that were created again to provide a choice for individuals to choose living in an institution, receiving services there, or living in a community setting and getting Medicaid services or Medicaid funded services in the community. And again, Medicaid does not pay for your room and board in the community. So if you're living in a community training home, let's say for somebody with developmental disabilities, then your SSI income or your SSDI income may be used to actually pay for the bed and for your food. Medicaid is going to come in and it's going to pay for your care, your treatment, therapeutic services, maybe some training for independent life skills and things like that. And of course, if you're under the age of 21 on Medicaid, then you have the right to early periodic screening, diagnostic, and treatment. That only applies until you are 21. Next slide. Basic law in South Carolina and also in the federal law is that you must be allowed to be in the most integrated setting which is appropriate. So that enables the person with a disability to interact with non-disabled persons to the fullest extent possible. So our goal is to try to allow you again to choose where you want to live in a setting that's appropriate for you, but to also know that wherever you live, you have the right to engage in the community around you. And that could include non-disabled people as well as other people with disabilities. Next slide. There are particular state laws that talk about individuals with mental illness and intellectual and related disabilities, and they provide a lot of the same basic rights that we've talked about for clients in facilities. There is a specific right, though, if you're going through a commitment procedure, if someone is saying that you're so ill that you need to be in a facility or receiving a specific course of treatment, and so they want to have you committed to either a facility or a hospital or another treatment program, and they have to go through court to do this, then you have the right to an attorney to help you through that process. You also have the right to consent to it used to be called electric shock treatment or other medical treatments. And again, you always have the right to the least restrictive, appropriate care and treatment. Next slide. Again, you always have the right to be in the appropriate setting. So you may not be forced to stay at a level of care that is more expensive and more restrictive than what you need, especially when the appropriate setting is available. So we're supposed to help you, the system is supposed to help you actually determine what your level of care is, also what you can afford, and then help you get into the setting that meets your needs and doesn't over provide or doesn't over restrict your rights. Next slide. You always have the right to communicate, so you have the right to use mail. Nowadays, it could be email, but if you use physical mail, that's fine. The right to a telephone and privacy while you're making telephone calls or receiving calls. The right to actually talk to people and see them, whether it's staff members or members of your family or people from the community. And that applies whether or not you are in an institution or a facility or living in the community. You also have to have right to have reasonable access to writing materials, including stamps and envelopes. So again, you can actually mail things back and forth, and reasonable access to telephones, including the funds or the means in which to use those telephones. Next slide. Okay, what we want to do now is take the time to see if there are questions from our audience or things that we can clarify for you.